First and foremost, we're going to do this in a 2-point perspective. Now you can draw this out by drawing in the horizon line and then making a point on the left side and a point on the right side. And in 2-point perspective, all of your lines will go to one of those two vanishing points. If you don't want to draw your own perspective, you can just download mine from my Digital Artist Starter Kit, which is a free download. Once you've drawn your 2-point perspective grid, you go up to the opacity slider here, and let's just knock down the opacity down to about 20%. Next, you're going to want to create a new layer with this little icon right here. That just adds a new layer to the top of your stack. And then for your brush, you just want to go ahead and feel free to explore, find a brush that you like, something that feels comfortable to you. I found that a lot of these feel very much just like regular pencils. Clip Studio Paint has a nice selection of just pencils or ink brushes. Now I can finally give you that first lesson in just 2-point perspective. Okay, so we draw a little dot on our vanishing point number 1, draw a little dot on vanishing point number 2. We're going to be drawing a box in the middle. This is construction. Everything's built out of boxes. So you draw a little dot, you hold down the Shift key, and then that allows you to draw a perfectly straight line, and then you connect that. Now, where's the bottom one? Well, the way we find that is by drawing a line straight down. All vertical lines in 2-point perspective are perfectly vertical, and then that tells us where the bottom of our box is, and then we draw that to vanishing point number 2. We draw the first one to vanishing point number 1, and then we're going to draw in the depth of the box, and you can begin to see how now we are already at a point where we've got a box in perspective. And in fact, if we were to go in and start to erase out, and I've just used the eraser tool, if we were to begin to erase out the excess lines, our construction lines, we would begin to see that we have a cube in 3D space. Bam! That's the essentials of 2-point perspective. But we can go a little bit further with this so that we can understand it a little bit better. If you want to find the midpoint between two edges that are perfectly in the center, you draw an X in the middle. So I'm going to draw a line across from each of these two corners, and that perfectly centered line right there is going to be the midpoint. So you can imagine if there were a bunch of these faces going back into the distance, they would be getting closer and closer, and that's what happens. As things get further away, they look smaller and smaller. So we leave a little mark here, and that's going to be the indicator for, let's say, the top of a house structure, right? So I'm going to draw a perfectly straight vertical line up to the peak of the house, and then I'm going to connect these points right here to create the top of that rooftop. If we wanted to find, let's say, the top of a door or a window or something like that, every line that is on this face of this structure is going to have to go back to that vanishing point number 2. And then every line on the left side, left face, is going to go back to vanishing point number 1. And that's going to be what's going to create this feeling of 3D, this illusion of perspective. And that's all drawing on paper or drawing in digital art is creating the illusion of depth and light and space and construction and anatomy and all the fundamentals of drawing. And so you can feel free to play around a little bit more with this lesson if you wanted to, but let's dig into drawing a treasure chest because it's a little bit more of a complex shape than just a square house. Now we want to build our guides first, so make sure that you're on a nice clean layer. I've just deleted everything I had. And I'm going to draw in my perspective grid guidelines, but I want to make sure that I've got a little bit more of a face on the right side than the left side. So it's going to look like we're seeing the front side of the treasure chest on the right side, this face over here. And remember, it's okay if your lines go a little bit over or you're going to get a little bit sketchy or loose. You can even do this freehand if you don't want to get that like perfectly straight line. If you want to just kind of do it with your, like, eyeball it a little bit, it's okay. As long as you're making sure that you're following those rules of the 2-point perspective that I showed you earlier in this video, where everything on the left side is going to that vanishing point far off onto the left, vanishing point number 1, and everything on the right side is going off to vanishing point number 2. Then you can go in and erase out all the excess lines and all this stuff that was the overdraw stuff. And just to make sure that you're clearly visualizing this cube in 3D space, I've gone ahead and sketched in the back side as if this were a transparent cube. Now, utilizing the exact same method that we used to find the peak of the house, we're going to find the center point, the center line of this face on the left side. And we're going to draw that X down the middle, and then we're going to be able to find the highest point of our treasure chest, and that'll be our middle point as it extends up on top of our cube. Now remember that even the high point of our chest has to go back to that vanishing point number 1. And this allows us also to see what would a curve look like through here. And we kind of have to eyeball this a little bit, but it's just like the steeple or the top of the triangular roof shape that we would have if this were a house, but we want to get a little bit more curve in there. And of course, to find the curve on the top of the backside of our treasure chest, we need to do the same thing. Using the same technique to find the center line, and then we will have that top point of our treasure chest going back to vanishing point number 2 so that we can find where this edge is going to be for the curve on the back side of our treasure chest. Now, when I'm doing this, I like to make sure that all of my guidelines and construction lines that I'm doing are on another layer so that I can make sure that I adjust the opacity and back it off so that it's not part of my finalized inked line art. It also makes it easier if you want to clean things up to go to that guidelines layer and just erase out and not erase the finalized line art on the top layer. We're probably going to want a keyhole here or a lock so we can find the center line for the front face as well. Now, these are just a great guideline. These are just a starting point. If you want to add a little bit more character to your treasure chest, like that more of that World of Warcraft style or fantasy style, then you can curve these vertical lines. Remember, all of your guidelines are just that. They're just guidelines. They're the underlying construction. Everything you draw throughout your entire career as an artist will be based on these squares and circles and cylinders and spheres. Even characters use spheres and cylinders for their underlying construction. So now you can begin to just freehand it. You don't have to use that perfectly straight line that you get if you're holding on the shift key or anything. You don't have to do that anymore. Now you can just freehand draw. And you'll notice I kind of turn on my guides and I turn them off every now and then just so that I can make sure that I'm drawing in the right position, the right spot. And just remember that if you curve in one of the lines on the right face, make sure that you also curve in the one on the line that's closer to the middle line of the corner of that treasure chest. Now, however you want to design your treasure chest is up to you. If you want to add big curved top metal plates to the top of it, if you want to do a big square padlock right down the middle, that's your choice. It's your prerogative. You can design your treasure chest however you want. You can just copy what I'm doing. Just make sure that if you've got lines on this front face, that they all go back to that vanishing point number 2 on the right. And if you have lines on this left face, they all go back to that vanishing point number 1. As long as you're following those rules, then anything that you design in there is okay, at least for now. Personally, I decided to add a little bit of curvature to the bottom of this padlock looking lock mechanism that's going to be attached to the front. And again, you'll notice that I was using that guide to find the center point of my treasure chest, my box, the underlying cube that all of this is built around, to find that center point of where it's connecting. And you want to make sure that you always, when in doubt, go back to those fundamentals of your construction. And if something looks wonky or out of place, or maybe it's not a convincing illusion of depth or perspective, go back to the beginning of this video and review what I had taught you about the 2-point perspective basics. And remember, it's okay if you stumble a little bit through this part. It's okay if you have to go back and review it, because you're going to need to get this down and understand this if you're going to learn to become an artist, if you're going to learn to be able to draw. It's also okay if you try something and you're like, well, wait a minute, that piece doesn't make sense. I don't want that. Well, it's a good thing that you have some of these pieces on new layers. The purpose of this exercise is to get you practicing working with layers in Clip Studio Paint, and to get you practicing working with 2-point perspective and underlying construction. Once you get those 3 things down, you'll find that other things that you want to draw, like cars or planes or guns or other things that you want to draw, are going to be so much easier to understand how to draw them in perspective. In fact, I would say that it's beneficial for you to just continue to repeat this process Just like if you were sketching in some sketchbook in your school notebook or something, just keep doodling, but keep these principles in mind about underlying cubes and finding the center point of some of these faces as they go into the distance. And every single piece or component of this treasure chest needs to fit in line with the same perspective rules, okay? So if you want to add in little rivets, they have to also fit into the perspective grid. And if you want to add little hooks on the side of your treasure chest so that it could be carried, those have to fit into the perspective grid as well. And if you have something sticking out of the top of it, like spikes or some kind of handle or something, that also has to fit into that same 2-point perspective. You can't have a totally different 2-point perspective. And you'll notice every single line that I'm drawing fits into the perspective rule. I really wanted to have this kind of a combination of wood and metal, so I've gone in and drawn in these wood planks and then erased out the pieces that extend beyond the physical edge of that treasure chest. I also wanted these spikes on the top. Those spikes also need to fit into perspective. So if you have one on the front face over there on the left side, you also have to have it in the same perspective, and it shouldn't stick up higher than it should if it were in perspective on the right side. Now, if you were to look at my layer stack, you might be wondering, well, what the heck, man? You're starting to get confusing over there. But to me, I just look at it and think, well, once I'm committed to something, I can merge those layers down. But if I wanted to try something like a different shape for some of these rivets, or if I wanted to try adding in some details for the wood to really make that material seem different than the metal areas, that's really what you want, is a little bit more variety. And it's nice to have that on another layer, just in case if you change your mind before you're ready to commit to it. You'll notice I'll create sometimes a new layer just for something like adding a little bit of shadow underneath some of these edges. So if you think about this, it's like the light is coming straight down. So any of those edges that stick out from the surface that they're against would have a little bit of a black shadow immediately underneath it, because we just got a top-down lit treasure chest here. And again, it's really beneficial if this is all on a different layer, because if you change your mind while you're still in this design phase of drawing this thing, if you change your mind, you can still just change that. You can still just erase that out without disrupting or distorting any of your underlying structure or the things that you're sure that you want to commit to in the design. There is no limit to the number of layers that you can use. However, I've found that I try to be optimal, and you'll notice at this point I've really only got 3 layers going on, and the other 3 layers are just for my guides, and then there's the blank white canvas in the very background. If you want to change something, you can use the lasso to make a selection. In this case, I'm selecting this lock, this padlock that I have. And once it's selected, you can rotate it with the little knobs that it has there, and you can actually transform it into a skewed perspective if you wanted to, or make it smaller if there's something that you wanted to increase the size. It's a good way to do that. Just make sure that it's all on one layer. Obviously, you can Command C to copy, Command V to paste if you wanted to just make a duplicate. But in this case, I'm just doing a simple transform with it. And then anything that you've transformed, you might have to do a little bit of cleanup on the line work, because sometimes you get little cutout artifacts and things like that. When you're a professional artist, you start seeing other people's mistakes all over the place. So sometimes I'll be looking at video game covers and I see where they didn't clean up their transforms, or they've got little cutout pieces that they didn't clean up. So be mindful of that, because I'll see it. I will. And I'll call you out on it too when you're a pro. No cut and paste job is going to get by me. And just as a personal taste, I like to go in and just add a little bit of little lines to the ground so that it feels like it's actually sitting on a surface beneath it. And obviously you can see that I've turned off my guide layers. They're still there. They're just underneath and hidden. So we don't need to see them in the final drawing. There's a lot of art that you see online that you'll never see their guidelines, their underlying construction, and that's why it looks so magical. For the final touches, you may want to just go in and doodle in some little extra knobs or little rivets, or add little chips into the metal, or little pieces of rock at the base of it so it looks like it's sitting on a dirt mound, for example. Or you may want to just thin out some of your lines or clean them up if you wanted to. This is a good time to go in and add that extra layer of polish, to really present your line art as neatly as you want it to be, because you're no longer thinking about the underlying construction or the design of the thing. Now it's just about adding all the little neat stuff. You could add some filigree pattern work in there. You could pull up some Google imagery on other treasure chests and maybe borrow some patterns, that sort of a thing, and really be free. You should feel free to make it however you want. This is your treasure chest, no one else's. And you know what? If you don't like it, you can make another one tomorrow or immediately after this one. And that is what being an artist is all about, is sometimes just practicing those fundamentals. Now I want to take a brief moment to congratulate you because you've just completed one of the core fundamental lessons that you will be using for the rest of your drawing lifetime, the time that you are doing art. You've got a basic understanding of underlying construction and you have a basic understanding of perspective. You can use this to make a lot of different stuff, and I look forward to seeing what you can draw with these tools. Come on back in the next video. In lesson 2, we'll be adding some color and some lighting to your treasure chest.